Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Now We're Talking, my new show on Vonage's Twitch channel. I'm super happy to be here with you all, and it is my job to have interesting conversations about programming and tech with different guests. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cory Althoff. I am a developer advocate at Vonage, and I'm also author of a book called The Self-Taught Programmer, and I have a new book called The Self-Taught Computer Scientist, which is coming out in July. And today, I've got Christina Roberts here with me, and she is a programming bootcamp graduate who now works as a software engineer at ChartSpan and is an evangelist for women who code. So welcome, Christina. Super happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being invited on.
Yeah, it's great to be talking with you today. Where are you calling from?
South Carolina.
Oh, that's awesome. I went to school in South Carolina. So I went to Clemson.
Really?
So I spent
Yeah.
a lot of time there.
That's awesome.
Whereabouts are you in South Carolina?
I'm in Taylor, so it's close to Greenville, probably like an hour and something from Clemson. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love Greenville. That's a great city. Cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so my first question for you was I want to know if you learned how to program or were interested at all in programming when you were growing up.
So actually, I was not interested in programming at all. My brother was always like building computers and stuff like that, so I kind of had a little taste of it. And my first real experience with computers was in high school. So our high school actually offered a Cisco class. So I was actually the first female to ever take that class, and they let me start it as a junior. So that was my first introduction to computers, really, but it wasn't necessarily programming. It was more networking type of stuff.
Awesome. That's super cool. And anyone who is, hey, Ben, how's it going? Anyone who is in the audience, if you want to leave a comment and if you have any questions, we will do our best to answer your questions as we go along. Cool. Okay, so your first experience with programming was in high school, and at that point, did you feel like you wanted to make that your career, or how interested were you?
I was really interested with it, but it just life events didn't pan out for me to follow that path at that time. So I kind of just put it away until much, much later in life. So I actually was then reintroduced to coding at about 31 or something years old.
And how did that happen?
So I had always worked in the medical field for a very long time. I had owned a store also, so very different from coding. But my dad had a stroke, so I moved up to Greenville to help care for him. And as he recovered, I then had more time on my hands, and I had to make a decision. Okay, I'm ready to get back in the workforce again. Which direction do I want to go? Do I want to go back to working at a hospital, or do I want to try something else? And my brother was in technology, so he was always prodding me to try some Python, to take a look at it, get into it. And I really honestly blew him off for a long time because I just thought, this is math and science and that's not my thing. I don't want to do that. But he sent me some books, including your first book. So I started working through those books. And the first couple books, it was really hard. I didn't start with your book at first because there's a lot of technical jargon, and I guess an assumption that you'd have some prerequisite knowledge about development, and I just didn't. So it took a long time to even try to understand what was going in there. But then when I got to your book, I was able to understand it a lot better, comprehend it a lot better, work through the projects, have those successes. And in fact, I loved it so much, I sent you an email when I was done saying thank you for writing this book.
That's so awesome to hear that. What was the first book that you tried?
I think it was just Python for Kids, which is, it seemed embarrassing at the time, but I mean, it's really not, because that's the level I was at. I didn't have any previous development experience. It's not like I was switching over from another language. It was a totally new experience. So I just started on like the very base level. And in my book, that's perfectly okay for anybody.
Cool. All right. We have a question. Did you do a lot of programming tests on pen and paper? Could you clarify that? For whoever asked that, that question's like slightly confusing to me. But if you clarify that, we'll be happy to answer that. Cool. Okay. So you read my book. You started having more success programming, learning how to program. Do you remember what was the first program that you wrote?
I think the first program was using like the Turtle program to draw something.
Yeah.
So that was cool for me because, even though it's not relevant to anything I do these days, it was nice to be able to see a visual output from what I was making.
Okay,
So,
cool.
mhm.
And so at that point where you were working, right?
Well, at that point, I was not. I was working because I was taking care of my dad and
Uh-huh.
helping, with the house and his recovery and
Yeah.
everything. But so during the day, I would do that, and then I have
Okay.
two children. So at
Okay.
night, once they went to sleep and everybody went to sleep, I would go out in the sunroom, and my dad had literally like a 1992 desktop computer,
Uh-huh.
which took me a week to get Python installed on. So I'd go out there and work a couple hours at night, like
Wait, it
midnight
took
to
you a
3
week?
a.m. Yes.
How did it take you a week?
Because I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a 1992 desktop computer, so nothing was compatible.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's frustrating. That's some perseverance right there. That it took you a week just to get Python installed and you were able to still push through and become a software engineer. So that's amazing. So how long did you self-study for just using books and stuff like that?
I'd say probably a year to a year and a half.
Did you use any other resources like Free Code Camp or any like Udemy courses or anything?
Mm-mm,
It's
and
just books?
honestly, yeah, just books for the first while, and I was a little bit naive to what was out there. But books worked for me because I could take it at my own pace. I could literally see with my hand. I could write notes on the paper. So I'm a big fan of, actual old school paper books.
Yeah, me too.
And I could earmark it and go back to things that were important that I might need to look back later on. So that worked really well for me for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. And then what happened next in your journey learning to code? And were you focused mostly on Python? I know those are two completely different questions, but let's go with the Python one. Were you focused mostly on Python or were you learning other languages?
No, I was completely focused on Python at that point because it was hard enough for me to understand it, to be
Yeah,
quite honest.
yeah,
It's a whole different way of thinking and wrapping your head around things, and it's something I had never been exposed to too much. So that was good for me just to keep a focus and keep on moving as I went along to keep progress. And for your other question, so I had worked through quite a few books and had quite a few projects going, and then I got to a point where I just wasn't making much progress on my own. And when I was trying to find answers, I was still really early in the stage. So I wasn't quite sure what to be asking online. You Google the wrong thing and you end up with 1,000 different rabbit holes that are not what you're asking for. So I had taken a break for a little while, maybe a month or something, and then I decided that I needed to do something else because the book route wasn't working anymore. So I found out that they have meetups, like local meetups. I didn't know that existed at that point. So I searched up a meetup in my local area, went to it, and kind of hung out in the back and was quiet because didn't know what it was going to be like, and I thought, oh, all these professional programmers are going to be there, and they're going to be wondering why I'm there, which was not the case at all. So we ended up having a great time. We ended up walking around Greenville and brainstorming an idea for an upcoming project we could all do together, and everybody was super inviting. And during that meetup, somebody had mentioned that there was a code school, which I had no idea about either. So I went home that night and I looked it up, and I sent the information to my brother and was like, is this legitimate? Does this look like something that would be a good path? And he said it was. So I messaged them and set up a meeting, went in and talked with them, and had a great experience. They're very down to earth, very reassuring, looked at everything we were going to learn, kind of looked around at what was happening, and some other people who'd gone to the code school. So I went ahead and applied. The first time I applied, actually had applied that night before I went to talk to them, but it was one day too late. So I missed the cutoff that time. Um, and then it had been a little while before got an appointment to go talk to them. But when I went in, everything was hopeful. I felt like this could be a good experience for me, and I had learned at that point that I was at a impasse for maybe being able to learn most efficiently by myself. That it might be better at that point to have some immediate feedback on things, which is totally fine because everybody learns in different ways. And going to boot camp, I learned how to learn, so learned a lot of great skills there. So yeah, I applied for there and ended up getting a full scholarship. Thankfully, Facebook had been in town and had lesson scholarships, and that is the only way that I would have been able to go because, like I said, I was being a caretaker. I didn't have a lot of money in the bank. So being given that opportunity, I fully took advantage of it, put my all in it, and just heads down and went for it.
So you said you felt like you had gone as far as you could on your own. What made you think that? Why? Why did you decide that?
Okay, so at the time, I just felt like I didn't understand what was being talked about anymore. And I think at that point, I was actually working on understanding some more complex classes and like class inheritance and base classes and things. And it just wasn't clicking. And later on, I realized that I had adopted a false understanding of classes. And so that's why it was not making sense anymore because I was expecting something different than they were actually going to do. So I think it had just come to the point where I was getting frustrated. And looking back, I probably was not at an impasse as much as I thought I was. But after so long of learning on my own, and probably sleep deprivation because I was doing this late at night and getting up to get the kids ready for school. It was just a lot. And until I had that community around me, it just felt really lonely and like, hey, maybe there isn't a path to do this for myself.
Interesting. And so can you tell us about your experience going to a boot camp? How long was it? And what kind of stuff did you learn? That kind of stuff.
So the boot camp I went to was 12 weeks. They did have a 2-week pre-course, so that was really helpful, and it was very intense. So I probably put in, between 65 and 80 hours a week doing it, which is fine because you're only doing it for 12 weeks, so you want to get the most out of it while you're there. And we studied Python, Django, React, JavaScript. We learned about APIs, authorization, all that kind of stuff. So we did a full stack, and we did a project every single day almost, and on a much larger project on the weekends. So we definitely reiterated of their skills, built on them as we went, and just continued building until at the end, we had a full stack project that had a React front end and a Django Python back end and integrated a couple APIs, and it was really cool.
That's awesome. And so you worked through the weekends?
Yes, every single day, 7 days a week.
Wow. That's intense. Did you enjoy that? Did you feel like you liked the intensity of the experience?
At the time, it probably wasn't my favorite, but I did appreciate it and I didn't take it for granted. I think I had a really healthy view of, I signed up knowing that this was going to be intense, and because it is a short amount of time, this is giving me a foot in the door into this field. So who cares if it's intense for 12 weeks? Like you can literally do anything for 12 weeks. So
yes,
suck it up. But there was a couple times that I cried at my kitchen table. I won't lie.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that 12 weeks is a lot of time to just work straight through weekends and be working. How many hours a day would you say you were working?
Well, we had class from 9 to 5, and then I would go home and probably work past midnight most nights. So, take a couple hours break to make dinner for the kids and, all the family stuff. But yeah, I put in a lot of hours.
Wow. Yeah, that's super interesting. Let's take 1 second to answer some questions. So, so I haven't heard of this. In my intro to CS courses at college, we did pen and paper tests, getting tested on statistics. Have you ever done that before?
No, I mean, I write on my...
Neither of us have a CS degree, so maybe that's a CS degree thing. I've never heard of that, but that's super interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. And another question, is there a qualification test before going into the boot camp to make sure you're ready? Ready equals not too advanced, not too beginner?
So we didn't have a test per se, but because I had been working on some projects when I came in, I was prepared and had a GitHub and, showed them my portfolio of the projects I'd worked on. And of course, we just had some conversations to kind of get where my base knowledge was. So it was, I knew what I was talking about with Python to a certain degree, but other things like I thought that JavaScript and Java were the same thing at my first interview. But, that's not a defining thing for somebody who is going to be able to succeed in software development. So thankfully, they looked past that. But yeah, I didn't have like a written test or a whiteboard test or anything like that. But definitely they do interview and see if you've put effort in, if you're really interested, if they think you're going to succeed, and if you have an actual interest in the field and not just, hey, this field makes good money.
Yeah. Well, that's great that they don't have that. I think some boot camps, I know I think App Academy and Hack Reactor, definitely Hack Reactor, they do have intro tests. I think it depends what boot camp, right, that you go to. Some of them you have to pass like a small test in order to get in. It sounds like you didn't, which is really cool. And they were able to extend you. But it sounds like you had been programming for a good amount of time through books and stuff. So it seems like you would have been able to pass that regardless.
Hopefully.
And by the way, if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. So someone said at Laywagon, we had intro test assignments. Okay, so I think it varies depending on what coding bootcamp you decide to go to. What would you say was the most challenging thing that you had to learn when you were learning how to code?
React. Well, now I'll just go back and say that JavaScript was very hard for me to learn. And I don't mind JavaScript now, but it's definitely not my favorite thing. But I think that people's brains tend to work in more in one way than the other, and mine kind of gravitates towards how Python works and backend languages versus JavaScript to me. So it was the most frustrating thing I learned during boot camp.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm the same way. So, okay, so you graduated from boot camp, and so you had never worked in software engineering before, right? You never worked at a tech job. So, what did that process look like? What was your first step towards trying to get hired?
Well, my first step was actually before boot camp, because I had learned that we need to have a GitHub. You need to have some stuff going. You need to have proof that you're, working every day. And then I'm a social person by nature, and especially from my past work experiences, I was always working with people directly. So during boot camp, I took every opportunity that we had to go to conferences. I spoke at a conference while I was still in boot camp. I took every single opportunity just to connect with people who are willing to reach out and be involved with bootcamp students and find our local tech community. And I think that was definitely one thing that set me up for success. And I think that's a step that a lot of people miss. They just focus on the actual bootcamp work or, the degree work, but they are missing that networking part. But the networking, and I don't mean just knowing people and being able to drop their name somewhere, but making those genuine relationships and taking the time to learn from them is going to benefit you greatly in your knowledge and in just opportunities to grow and be invited to different places and be involved in a community, which is the biggest part. So I took those proactive steps to make sure that there was, something to show for my work as I was going along, and to make sure that I was growing, not just in my actual coding skills, but in my speaking skills and in my, things that I didn't even know existed just by going and listening to other people talk.
How'd you know to do that? What made you aware of that?
Well, on the GitHub thing, my brother told me to set up a GitHub, so I did. But as I started working more with GitHub and discovering, like open source and all the different things that GitHub offered, then I realized, hey, this looks like it's a vital part of being in the developer community, and it's not just your little page hidden away somewhere. This is a link to a very large worldwide community, and it's important. So I pretty much just followed that. And then with the conference things, in our boot camp, we had invitations to go to some conferences for free as students, and just a couple people reach out. So even though we were very busy, I thought it was just very important to go do that. And because I'm so social, I wanted to go do that anyways, and take a little break from, staring at the screen and pounding out code all day. So.
Very cool. That's very impressive. We got one quick question. Sorry if I missed this. Was the boot camp part-time or full-time?
Double full-time.
Double full-time, yeah. She was working weekends, so it was very, very full-time. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and Christina will do her best to answer them. So awesome. So you're speaking at conferences, you're networking, and then did you start sending out resumes, or what did that look like?
So I had started preparing resumes, and at our boot camp, we got to do a demo day at the end. So we got to display our projects that we made, and people from community came and, mingled and looked around at them and stuff. And so I had one of the people that I met at the demo day ended up offering an internship later through their company. So I had already applied to a couple internships. I got a couple acceptances, but I ended up going with the internship with a company named Demartian, which was an excellent choice. And I learned a lot there. I'm very, very glad I took that internship. And I know that at first I was thinking, oh, I'm too old to do an internship. That's not going to serve me well, or I'm going to be there with a bunch of 18-year-olds. But it was the best decision. And it really put that buffer time where I could learn some lessons before being on the job, where I could get some more experience instead of having to necessarily wait until someone just gave me a chance on hiring. It gave me a wider view of things to work on that I had worked on in code school. And it was really vital for that mental transition between, okay, well, I'm just a student and I graduated, to, hey, I've, in a real company here, I've been given responsibilities and I've delivered on them. And I've learned a lot in the process, but I had that responsibility and I've worked on a team and I've learned how, Scrum and Agile works. And I would definitely recommend an internship. So I went to the internship, and then partway through the internship got a offer for the company that I work for now. So finished out I didn't finish out the complete internship because they were totally supportive of, this is for you to learn and to help you get a job. So
Yeah.
did my 2 weeks at the internship and then started the position I'm at now.
That's really cool. And how did that offer come in? Had you applied or did they reach out to you?
For where I work now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had also gotten on LinkedIn because I took the advice of some people who said that was vital. So I'd gotten on LinkedIn, and because I worked in the medical field before, I definitely was leaning towards wanting to stay something medical technology because that's where my passion is. And so on LinkedIn, I had just kind of searched around and found some local companies that were medical technology companies. Remote wasn't really a big thing when I started, so had to find something local, and just researched them and found out, looked at the teams and looked how people were speaking on LinkedIn, and just how their company was in general. And so I kind of zoned in on a few, and then I friended everybody that would accept me in that company. And one day ChartSpan had put up a post that they were going to be looking for a developer sometime soon, and so I reached out to the CTO. And we'd had some interactions just randomly on LinkedIn posts at that point anyways, and started a discussion with him. And so we had a lot of discussion because I was brand new. So thankfully he believed in giving people that start and that chance. But we had a lot of unofficial interviews, just talking through ideas and mindsets and, what to expect and those type of things. So it was actually a few months after I had started speaking to the CTO of ChartSpan before they were actually ready to hire, and I started going through the official interview process.
Wow, it's just so impressive that like your perseverance and like the way that you just go above and beyond. I feel like a lot of people make a lot of excuses, or they just sort of like expect things to happen, and it just really, with your story, that you just make things happen. You're on LinkedIn talking to the CTOs, sending out messages and talking at conferences, and it seemed like, how are you so motivated? I mean, it took you a week just to get Python installed. How are you so motivated to make this happen?
Well, I guess I'm just going to be really candid with you. And, I've said that I have 2 children, and I worked in the medical field, but I was not in a high paying position. So although I really genuinely loved what I did tremendously, I did not make enough to survive. Plus, I worked in trauma. And so that is very, very hard emotionally and mentally. And after years and years and years of, that type of experience, I was really kind of burnt out on it. And I thought, I still want to make a difference in patients' lives, and the people who are there face to face with them, holding their hands or getting them a warm blanket or whatever they're doing, are making a difference. But I can also make a difference being in the medical technology field and maybe helping the software that goes into the hospital, so nurses aren't as agitated and doctors aren't agitated, and then they're giving better patient care so that patient records are accurate when they go through and there's no misunderstanding, and it kind of cuts down the danger. Like, there's lots of ways to achieve helping people and helping the people who work in medical facilities on both ends. So I just figured, I'm going to miss that, but I want to be able to not work every single holiday, which you basically have to do at a hospital. I would like to be able to afford health insurance for me and my children. I would like to be able to, we had never taken a vacation at that point. And I mean, that's crazy. So I just decided that I had to do something different. And if I'm going to put my all in there, I learned enough about life to know that, sending out a resume that says, hey, I'm in my 30s and I only have a boot camp education here, and nothing else on paper necessarily relates to being a programmer, although in real life it definitely, definitely does. So I had learned that they're not going to hire me, and nobody's going to hire me based on that just went to a boot camp. They're going to hire me because they're going to have a chance to know me and, see who I am, know that I'm going to be great on their team, know that I'm going to be encouraging to people, know that I'm going to work hard. And so the only way to do that is to actually let people see you and not just see a piece of paper that you're going to send into a computer system.
I think that's just incredible advice. And people ask about this all the time. So I'm super happy that you're talking about that. And your strategy was amazing. I mean, I found my first programming job on LinkedIn as well. And so I think you really just have to, I mean, that's incredibly inspiring. Have you gone on a vacation now?
Yes, I've enjoyed vacations now. So
where's the last place that you took your family?
Well, we just went recently to Myrtle Beach and to Charleston, and before that we went to South Texas, where I grew up. So that had been the first time I'd been home in 13 years.
Oh wow, that's really cool. So cool. I've been to Myrtle Beach as well, and Charleston's really an amazing town as well. That's really cool. Let's address a couple questions. So, did you keep up with some of your peers in your cohort? Did they also use similar strategies post boot camp? Any other strategies? What was the success for them with regards to career path? So how did everyone else do in your boot camp?
So I still keep up with people from my boot camp, and I'm like actively involved with every cohort after me in our coding school. So I keep up with everybody.
That's really
and
cool.
I can tell you that the networking part is the successful part for everybody. And, whether I'm not going to say it's fair or unfair, but 90% or more of jobs come from people who will vouch for you saying, hey, they're going to be a good fit with our team, or they're going to be hard workers, or they're very good communicators. Because the bottom line is that in software development, it's a little bit different than a lot of other jobs. So it's not just based on the fact of, can I write 40 of these functions a day, but it's based on the fact of development is like a crazy thing for everybody. Everybody's learning new things all the time. Even people who've been in the field for 20 years that I work with are learning new things every week. So it's really kind of, I feel, almost more important to be able to have a good attitude every day and communicate and be a good team player and be excited and willing to learn than it is your actual, skills for a long time.
Absolutely. So can we talk about the interview process a little bit? Mm-hmm. What was the process like once you started the official interview process? So what was the first step there?
So the first step is I had an official phone conversation with the CTO. And then after that, we had a conversation with the lead developer and the CTO again, where they kind of asked me questions about a lot of things. Now, they did use some of the same technologies at my company that I was already learning, so they asked me some questions about that, but they also asked me questions about things I had no idea about, and I was just really honest, like, I don't know. I've never been exposed to that, but I can surely go find out and send you an email about it when we're done with this conversation. And I think that that's something that really needs to be said. Like, don't try to bluff your way through things that you don't know, because no one expects you to know everything. But just talk through your thought processes. Even if you don't have the actual answer to the question, you can talk through your thought process up until the point where you don't know where to go next. So we did a lot of that.
That's awesome. And did you have to do a technical interview at any point?
So I didn't have to do a technical interview like a whiteboard style or a send home project. And I think that is because thankfully my interviews are just aware that, we know we're hiring a boot camp student. So we're not really hiring you on what technical skills you have now, but in the belief that we have that you are going to be able to learn to integrate with our company and provide value, pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't think that they were going to expect much from a standard technical interview, which was fine with me.
Cool. And when you first started, did you feel like you were prepared?
Yes. So yes and no. And I think that I really owed my CTO at the time credit for that, because he was very clear We had another interview where I went in and met the whole dev team that was, in the United States at one time. So that was good. But everybody was very clear about what the expectations were. So I didn't feel like super pressured that they were expecting me to, produce this amazing, beautiful code suite day one or anything. And so that made my onboarding and my transition into the tech field a lot easier. So I think I was prepared for what they were expecting, and it set me up to perform a lot better than I think a lot of people just entering the field get to, because I think a lot of people have, whether it's real or subconscious, they feel a lot more pressure than is actually there.
That's awesome. It sounds like that's a great company, and that
Mm-hmm.
that onboarding was really smooth. That's great. So could you tell me about your involvement with Women Who Code?
Yes, so Women Who Code is near and dear to my heart, and they're a worldwide organization, and then there's lots of little local chapters and towns. So the worldwide organization has resources that literally anybody can go look at and and gain knowledge from. It's really not it's not super exclusive or anything. So they have lots and lots of recorded information about different coding topics, design theories, different technologies and serverless, writing resumes, all kinds of stuff that you can see at any time. They have a job board, and I think that that's really important to support. To support women, and I don't want to make it seem like Women Who Code is exclusionary, because it's really not, and it's not what a lot of people think it is, where like it's trying to elevate women above anybody else. But really, Women Who Code is just a group of women who love to code and also love hanging out and talking with other women who code. And so it serves a lot of purposes, and it's super fun. And anybody who's interested in joining tech, like, it's not just for developers, it's for program managers,
Oh, cool. I didn't know
IT
that.
people, DevOps. We have technical writers in our local group. We have some women who design games and stuff. Like, anything in technology, come join us, share your ideas. It's an open floor, and you're more than welcome there. So
Very cool. That's awesome. And do you mentor a lot of other coders now?
So I do different kinds of mentoring. Like I said before, I'm always involved with the current students at the code school. So I go and give talks at the code school and make myself available in different fashions so they can always ask me questions. I always have a group of people just from like my personal life that are not affiliated with any kind of group who are interested or thinking about getting into tech. So I always have information going out, different resources they can use, and they all go at different levels. Some decide not to go that path, and then some really take off with it. So so I'm always kind of doing that in my personal time, and then one-on-ones with the people who are really going forward with it and need some help along the way, or just need whatever, somebody to talk to and say, hey, look, I built this thing and nobody understands around me what I did, so isn't it awesome? I'm like, yes, totally awesome, you did
Very
it.
cool. That's really cool. So overall, did you have a positive experience with your programming bootcamp? Would you recommend people go to a programming bootcamp?
Yes, absolutely. For me, it was a great choice because it helped me speed up the process. And though I did have some background knowledge, I don't necessarily think that I would have taken the route and learned the things that I did on my own without the boot camp. So it was really great that even though it was intense, that it gave me a lot of confidence. And actually, the biggest thing from coding bootcamp for me wasn't the drastic change in my skills, although I did have a drastic change in my skills. It was the mental accomplishment, and kind of changing the mindset from, hey, this seems crazy. Am I wasting my time? I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this, to, look, I am now a developer. I have built all this stuff. Look at my
Yeah,
GitHub. Let me show you my project. I'm ready to go.
that's really cool.
And yeah, and so I wasn't, and not being alone for me really helped in that. We got to just go
Mhm.
through things as our own little community there.
That's so cool. And what advice would you give someone who wants to learn to code, has no experience, and is starting this week?
My advice would to be to get your first book and learn Python. I mean,
Awesome.
honestly, literally, that was the book that, like, kept me from just full out quitting
That's
and
so
getting
cool.
success. So I would go that route. I would definitely link up with community, even if you're just going to meetups and you don't
Yeah,
code in that language. Just go and listen. Like, you learn so much just from being exposed to different things and hearing other people's past. So for me, that's the first two steps. Get the
very
book,
cool.
go to a meetup.
I love that. Thank you. I'm so happy that it was able to help you, and you had such an impressive career. That's awesome to just have played a tiny little part in it. What career, communities are you? So you're part of Women Who Code. You remember the Self-Taught Programmers Facebook group. Are there any other communities that you recommend or that you're part of?
So I do mentor at Built by Girls. So that's an
Oh, very
awesome
cool.
program. It was a little intimidating for me at first, but check it out. It's really helpful for the young ladies who are coming up to have just somebody to talk to about their experience in the corporate world, or whatever they may need. And then so I go talk to some schools, doing career day type things. And then, like I said, I'm involved with the code school. So I did have a personal desire. It just came to me one day, and I started this movement to like provide 15 full scholarships for students at the same code school
Wow.
I went to. And because of the fact that I would not have been able to go, I would not be living
Yeah.
this life. I would not be able to help anybody else if I had not received a scholarship. Now, granted, mine was from Facebook, but we do not have to wait for huge conglomerate companies to offer up
Yeah.
scholarships places. Like, we are a collective tech community, and I'm able now to give back, and so I feel like we all have some capacity to give back. And a scholarship to code school for a lot of people, especially coming from minimum wage, or even up to like $15 an hour, you can't raise a family on that. That could literally not just be a gift and a kind thing to do, but it can change their whole life, and it can change their whole family tree. We're talking about taking entire families out of poverty and into a flourishing career, and a place where they can grow as people, with once it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once those basic needs are met,
Yeah.
then you can grow into the person you are really supposed to be, instead of just functioning in a way of survival and stress. And so anybody who would like to help me with that mission, we're at like two scholarships now, two full
Oh,
scholarships.
wow.
So you can go to carolinacodeschool.org and just go to their support page. And anything, like even $5, you can be a part of literally changing people's lives. And it's a beautiful thing, because people who have come from a different life experience are very motivated to then give back to the community once they are able to. And that's a really beautiful thing, whether it's money or time or
Yeah.
experience, because they're very grateful. So I think that's a great mission for all of us to do. And it doesn't have to just be supporting my desire to provide that. You can do that wherever you are.
Yeah.
There's lots of code schools everywhere. You donate
That's
a
awesome. Yeah.
computer or something. So
Yeah. I think it's really important for you to share your story and how much it helped you and how big of an impact it had on your life, because it is really inspiring to see your story and how you were able to create this new life for yourself. And I've never really thought about how much of an impact it can have. Learning
mhm,
it, can change your entire life. So that's really inspiring that you're doing that.
yeah.
Very
Well, and I
cool.
do want to point out too that there's a segment, and one of the things I did was go and talk to like women's shelters, because there's a whole, and this can happen to women or men, but there's a whole segment of people who are stuck in bad life situations or abusive situations, but they can't leave because they can't afford to leave.
Mhm.
So that's also something else to think about, getting involved with your local shelters or programs like that, because this actually provides a pathway for those type of situations too, for people to be able to provide for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never thought of that, but you're absolutely right. And that's super inspiring. So is Python still your favorite programming language, or do you have a new favorite?
No, Python is my first love and will always be my first love. I've, ventured into new things, but yeah, Python is where I love to stay. I do think Ruby's fun though.
Cool. What do you like about Ruby?
It's just fun to play with, so I haven't gone
Yeah.
too far in it now, but
Okay.
it's pretty similar to Python, but it's just
Yeah.
a little bit different. It's got different specialties, so yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring that more at
Cool.
some point.
And what are there any trends in tech that you're excited about right now, by any chance?
Serverless everything.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or is there any, what
Sure.
interests you in that?
So,
I'm not very familiar with it, so I'd love to
okay.
hear.
So working at my company now, I came in at a time where we were kind of transferring legacy code systems into serverless systems. So that really gave me a unique experience to be able to step back and have a lot more hands-on with decision making, design, kind of understanding how things will work from a bigger picture. And it's fun that we can write these Python code and it will interact with this serverless stuff. But it's kind of like its own well-oiled machine up there. So it was a good change of pace, and I've had a lot of fun just learning about the different pros and cons and the challenges that come up with it. And yeah, it's really fun. I've realized that one of my real passions is learning more about design and architecting the bigger systems, even though I still love writing the little stuff too.
Awesome. That's very interesting. I'm gonna have to look more into that. And so, one more question I have for you is, what are you interested in outside of programming?
So I love flowers and gardening. I'm not very
Oh,
good
cool.
at it, but that doesn't stop me from planting and killing a lot of plants. I love horseback riding. So I just started horseback riding again after not riding for 10 years. So surprisingly, I haven't fallen off the horse yet and have just experienced a lot of sore muscles instead. We love being out in nature. So me and my boys love going to the lakes and the rivers, and with it being springtime, we have a lot of chance for that, and just being outside in general and having fun as a family. So I'm really passionate about, obviously, you guys probably tell about just letting people know that this is a career path and letting them kind of giving them exposure and helping them figure out what the right pathway is for them if they are interested in getting in it. And I'm passionate about community in general. So no matter where we live, every community has, issues that we can work on. You can make a difference. You can be a leader. It does not matter if you have a title of any kind of leadership title. Like, you can influence the people around you no matter what you're doing. So I'm just really passionate in letting people know, like, you can be who you want to be. You can make a difference. You don't have to wait for a certain date or a certain credential. And literally nothing is stopping you. And you will be very surprised once you just start, having action and movement and going forth to do and achieve what you want to achieve.
Absolutely. And your story is super, super inspiring. I really enjoyed hearing about your path going from a complete beginner to getting your first job as a software engineer. And I know that it sounds like you're going to go even much, much further. Do you have any thoughts on, do you want to stay as an individual contributor doing programming, or are you interested in going into management at some point?
I love coding, but I know myself well enough to know that I also love people. I love managing. I love leading. And so it might be bold to say, but I am just going to say that I will be a CTO at some point. So that's my goal. I don't know how long it'll take to get there, but I think that's where I'm heading.
That's awesome. I'm sure, I have no doubt that you will be. Cool. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Those are all the questions that I wanted to ask. So is there anything else that you wanted to say? You had a pretty good sort of summary a few seconds ago, but if there's anything else you would like to add.
I want to ask you a question real quick.
Yes.
So as you have progressed in your career and, with these books, and you have your next book coming out and all these groups that you have, and being involved in your wife's TikTok, how does it feel for you, like, when you see that you're making a difference in people's lives, or you hear stories of how, you've played a part in their success? Like, how do you process that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, that's why I'm so happy to finally have the chance to talk with you, because we've been in touch for a long time, and it just feels so good. Like, it's so cool hearing your story and how big of a difference learning how to code made in your life, and just that's definitely the best part. Like, that's what has made this career really rewarding, is just hearing stories about real people that have completely changed their lives from learning how to code. So it's really cool. It's pretty much like the best thing in the world. Like when you get to talk to someone and you are able to impact their life, it's super rewarding, and it's so cool. And it makes me just want to get out there and keep doing it. I've got my next book coming out, and I'm hoping that can help a lot of people. Thankfully you didn't have to pass a technical interview, but a lot of people do have to pass technical interviews. And so that was sort of the goal with this book, was to help people pass those interviews to get even more self-taught programmers into positions. And, so hopefully that will make a difference as well. And that's why I love the job that I'm in right now too, working at Vonage as a developer advocate. It's really cool to be able to help teach still. So I'm doing actually something with Vonage in the upcoming months where I'm going to be hosting a workshop for the whole company, anyone from the company that wants to come, and we're going to go through learning how to code for people that don't know how to code, and then do some automation stuff for, anyone that, even if you don't want to become a software engineer, I think that learning how to code and just learning how to automate some, Excel files and stuff like that can be super helpful. So we're going to be covering that kind of stuff. And so that's why, I decided, instead of going back into software engineering, that developer advocacy would be really great for me, because it gives me the opportunity to keep teaching, which is something that I'm super passionate about, teaching and continuing that journey. So it's been really great. And I absolutely love teaching and getting the opportunity to play some small part in people's lives. So that's really
awesome.
Amazing.
Well, you definitely do make a difference. So keep on doing what you're doing. And I love that you guys are offering it to the rest of the company who are not coders. In fact, today, a lady from the business side of our company joined the tech team, and it just is so exciting, because it's so awesome when you can see people, even transfer their skills or whatever, or just use them in their everyday work. So super glad you're doing that. That sounds super fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing as well. I'm definitely going to check out the scholarship program that you mentioned. Cool. I'm going to throw up the link. Is that, you said it was Carolina School?
CarolinaCodeSchool.org. And then you go to the support tab.
Okay. I'm just going to throw that link up.
Thank you.
And of course. So this is where you can go if you want to be involved in Christina's scholarship efforts. And where can people find you online? Can people connect with you anywhere, like Twitter?
So no, I pretty much just stay on LinkedIn.
Okay, so it's Christina Roberts on LinkedIn. If you want to connect, that's the best place. Cool, awesome, and it's been amazing talking to you. Your story is so inspirational. So thank you for sharing it. And I think a lot of people are going to draw inspiration from this and have a better idea of what they can expect from a coding boot camp and what the best way to network is and to get a job. Very cool. Okay, so just wrapping up here, I have some links that people can go to for Vonage if you're interested. So at Vonage, we have some really, really cool APIs. I'm doing demos and workshops, which is teaching me personally more about our APIs. But we have all kinds of communication APIs where you can do all kinds of stuff. Basically, you can send SMS messages. You can make phone calls. You can actually clone Twitch, which is something that I've been doing a workshop on, which is really cool. And so I'm going to throw up the link here. If you want to sign up, you can go to developer.vonage.com and get involved that way just by using our APIs. But Christina, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone that asked such great questions. And this has been really, really fun. So any final things that you want to say?
Nope, just thank you for having me on. And anybody who's on their path to learning, stick with it. You can do it. It's going to be great. And connect with me. I'm always up for connecting on LinkedIn, Christina Roberts, FSD. And I want to keep up with all of you guys too. So hope to see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. And again, your story is so inspirational. So thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.